Welcome back to the show. My guest today has been Faisal Susiwala, also known as the top real estate broker in the world for RE/MAX. Listeners, if you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. Going through those notes again, Faisal, this jumped out at me because I might be guilty of one or two of these in some ways. We had our kitchen redone about 7 or 8 years ago, and I try to keep the surfaces clean and cleared and all that stuff, but the clutter builds up. We tend to make our kitchens look small. What are we doing, and what shouldn't we be doing?
Yeah, let's talk about a few of these things. So yeah, you mentioned clutter. Keeping surfaces clear and store away infrequently used items. That just, clear out the counters. Show the square footage of your counter space. I always say that to my clients when I'm getting them ready for pictures, because you want that sort of linear look happening in your kitchen. It makes it look and feel bigger. And of course, it's always nice to work in a nice, clean space. Too many colors. If you've got too many colors going on, stick to a cohesive palette, like reduce that visual clutter. Because a lot of times you got so much going on the walls, wallpaper, and different finishes and that type of thing. And again, it just makes the space look busier, and the appearance is not larger. Dark cabinetry, although some would argue, wood cabinetry is starting to make a comeback. Often it could be accented or whatnot, but opting for, and we do a lot of new housing, we always opt for lighter choices just to make it airier. Spaces are smaller in a lot of new construction. Reflective tones brighten the room. Dark colors will, make it look tighter and and
Yeah.
and
Yep.
those light colors, of course. Um, Create a lot of light in a kitchen.
All right.
Maximize the natural light. If you've got shears and blinds and drapes and window toppers, sometimes just removing those will
Hmm.
brighten up the kitchen and make it feel a lot larger. And just nice, clean, reflective type surfaces will shine with that as well. If you have poor proportions, so you might have an 8 by 12 kitchen, but you got a 6 foot by 4 foot fridge that's sort of standing there. And that makes it look really tiny and it gets in the way. So having like maybe counter depth appliances
Okay.
that are flush, if you're renovating, take your ceiling, take your cabinets to the ceiling. As
Okay.
opposed to stopping it at a certain height. I'm a short guy. I could never reach that other layer, but it's always nice to feel that height in there. And then lastly, just excessive elements. Like if you've got a lot of cabinetry, sometimes opening it up and having shelving on the uppers as opposed to having cabinets, it just gives it an airier feeling. And avoid those massive, islands are a big thing. Islands are great if
Right.
your kitchen is proportioned properly.
Okay.
If it's not proportioned properly and you put this massive island, it kind of gets in the way and just makes everything feel smaller, and it's very difficult to navigate around it. So those are some of the things that I've come across that I would definitely recommend keeping an eye out, especially if you're doing a renovation to your kitchen.
And we've talked this in the past as well, how important the kitchen is. It just becomes that central focus for gatherings. It's a communal spot, whether we intend it to be or not. A lot of times that, whatever was going on in the kitchen was our parents' domain or our mom's domain back in, in the Stone Age. But now it's where people gather. So you want it to look its best.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
The term dual income, no kids, DINK, was the term used back in the 80s. And then it kind of faded away because the things were changing and families were still growing. But it seems like the younger generation, millennials, are looking at that as a possible lifestyle again. Two people working, no kids at home. How if we go back to that, and if that's where we're moving to, how does that have an impact on the economy?
So first of all, I think we should bring the word dink back because you and I are from the same generation, I
Right.
think. And dink was a big word back then.
Yeah.
Double income, no kids, or dual income, no kids. But I often would call my friends a bunch of dinks back in the day, and my kids laughed at me when I said the word dink. They had never heard this before.
No, no.
Um, but yeah, exactly. But this, yeah, I think that lifestyle is certainly becoming very apparent. And it's going to impact the economy because the birth rate has steadily been declining. Fewer babies are born per thousand people. That is a global pattern. So it's not just exclusive to Ontario, Canada, or the North America. It's globally we're seeing fewer babies being born. So economists are concerned that the long-term effect of this low fertility rate and aging population, um, it's going to have a drop in the GDP. And they're
Right.
saying up to 4% drop. So that's a significant drop. I mean, these rates matter, right? Millennials, Gen Z in Canada are opting for that dual income, no kid lifestyle just because housing costs are so high. They
Right.
can't house the kids. They can't afford it. Children are expensive. Childcare is expensive. More and more people are dual earners. So we are now where, both husband and wife, both partners are working full time.
Right.
And they need to work full time in order to sustain their life. And because of all of this, it it would disrupt their career, and career is very important to both partners. It may not have been 40 years ago, but now it is.
Mhm.
And there are fewer younger workers out there as well. So all of this is impacting. Um, we are seeing that there's delayed childbearing, and that also limits the number of children that a family is going to have. And then societal priorities are like key drivers, right? So these are all
Right.
things that are impacting. So we could start seeing that, especially with the challenges primarily being high cost of living. It's just how can I feed another mouth is really
Right.
what we're looking at, right? And these are all realities, sad realities of our societies, and unfortunately, it is what we're seeing now.
And I think too, I've talked to some young people and they talk about the fact that, the impact on the environment and the idea that, 200 years ago, there was a billion people on the planet. Now we're at 8 billion. So, do they want to add to that, growth at such a rate? And I think it's a mindset though. I mean, and I think for our parents' generation, larger families, that was just the way that it was. Your people were going off to work and they would be coming back to look after their parents as they aged. Our generation, it was, it was the perfect fit. If you had, two or three kids or five kids or whatever, it's a mind shift for a lot of people, and maybe they know things that we don't know. These younger people, it's hard to admit that anyway, but it might be the case. Um, we've got a few minutes. The last thing that I was hoping to talk to you about today, Faisal, um, and it's a delicate subject in some ways, where we might have people waiting on inheritance to look at. That's the solution when we're looking at the housing market, and maybe people our age or a little bit older might be, instead of waiting on handing out that inheritance, maybe it's coming a little bit sooner. What are you seeing happening?
Yeah, some would say that inheritance is really the solution now to entering the housing market, right? And that is sadly a reality because that means that you're going to have some loss in order to have some gain here. So as baby boomers approach retirement, they're planning to pass down significant wealth to their children. The average inheritance that boomers intend to leave behind is around 940,000. So just under $1 million. And a portion of that inheritance will be put towards housing. So it's expected that about $200,000 of that, let's say $1 million, it could be that game changer for young buyers.
Hmm.
Because that $200,000, if you look at our region, represents 25 to 30% of the purchase price of a home. And that's enough to get them into the home where they wouldn't be able to do so because it's not an easy task to
Right.
save
Right.
up $200,000, given what we just talked about, cost of living, etc. So now you go into cities like Montreal. $200,000 could be 35% of your down payment. So again, it makes it that much more attractive to be in those areas. But with high home prices, especially in cities like Vancouver and Toronto, inheritance is going to become a key factor in home ownership. And sadly, um, a lot of that generation, the younger generation, is going to be waiting for that to
Mhm.
happen in order for them to be able to enter the market. And that's just a sad state that we're going to be in. That wealth transfer is going to be huge from boomers to their children, and it will reshape housing. There's no question about it. And I think that that is probably still 7 to 10 years out before we
Okay.
see the impact of that. Boomers are living longer.
Right.
They're watching their needs, rightfully so, because they can't rely on that younger generation to be able to take them in because they may not have housing.
Right.
So all of this is a little bit of a learning curve for us. And again, nobody knows what's going to happen. Uh, but it does look like inheritance is going to be the answer to affordable housing for young people to get in, at least to enter housing.
Okay. And it's, it's never too late for you and I to keep learning new things. We're lifelong learners. And I think we got to keep that in mind, Faisal. Faisal, thanks so much for coming on the show today. We covered all kinds of topics. It was a great chat. Always a pleasure to chat with you. And I hope to spend some more time with you in the new year as well, too.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. All the best to you and your family.
Same to you. Thank you, Faisal. That was Faisal Susiwala, top real estate broker, recently published author of The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, and someone who knows what he's talking about when it comes to the real estate market. Thanks to you listeners as well for joining us. You've been listening to Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio. All
Awesome.
right. Thank you, sir. Go
Good
and
job.
enjoy your evening.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.